tried to tell Henk, we ran a professional shop here, right? But I don't know. We're a little bit rusty.
We lied all the lies.
All right, let's get this thing started. Everyone comfortable? Are we ready to go? Thumbs up from the executive producer, Ray. Hello and welcome to the CS Duplessis Show. A big shout out to our partners at Betway. Check out betway.co.za for more information. Of course, coming up, the Betway SA20. You don't want to miss that. It is the second edition. Game of Zones, catch 2 million rand. Wait and see what happens there. But that's all on betway.co.za and their socials. Now, he is, how can I put this? He's a very talented man who likes to drive through the desert at incredible speeds. Unfortunately, he's missing out on the world's toughest race next year. Henk Lategan, thanks for joining us. But it always sounds weird because Ray has covered a few of these events, the Dakar. And you always say next year, but it's kind of like in the beginning of the year. So it's always weird. Like the 2023 edition, you feel like it's just strange. But I'm sorry to hear that you're not competing. But how is the recovery going, and what is that incredible contraption on your arm?
Oh, no, thanks for having me. This is the second time I've had one of these. This time it's a bit more serious.
Okay.
So in my first Dakar, which was 3 years ago, I had a crash on day 5. My Dakar ended early, and I ended up in a sling quite similar to this. I dislocated my shoulder backwards that time, and unfortunately this year in one of the local races I did basically exactly the same thing. So it was the same crash, just about. So it's too much force for my shoulder to handle, and it dislocated backwards, damaging a few things along the way. So I had surgery 5 weeks ago.
Okay.
And the doctor thinks it went well, so that's good news.
That's always a good start.
Yeah. But unfortunately, this time it's a bit more damage, they said. Last time I could be racing, or was racing already, it was exactly 100 days after the surgery, which was a bit of a push. Nobody really wanted me to do it. But this time it looks like a bit more damage. So unfortunately for me, this year I'm sidelined.
How is it feeling at the moment, 5 weeks out from surgery? I mean, you said to me you drove yourself here, and I was quite surprised. I'm not sure if you should be driving yourself at the moment, but you are a rally driver. You're a racing driver.
Yeah, I didn't ask the doctor because I was afraid of what he'd say. So I'm driving myself at least, and it's starting to get a bit better. I'd say the first 3 weeks were really painful. It's very uncomfortable to sleep. I have to keep this thing on. I have to. Basically, the only time I can take it off is when I shower. So,
man,
it's not comfortable.
Well, I wish you a speedy recovery, that you can get rid of the contraption more than anything else.
No, thanks.
Tell us, so when you drive, and I always ask, racing drivers this, or guys who ride bikes, when you're sitting in traffic, does it drive you absolutely crazy because of what you're used to, having the freedom of that sort of clean air in front of you?
I think my personality doesn't do well with traffic more than anything. I think the racing actually helps it a bit, maybe, because you get some of your frustrations out the way. If you get to drive a car flat out as fast as you can, or as fast as it will go, so then traffic becomes a bit more bearable because you'll get it out the way again sometime. So it's still, I think, for anybody. Luckily, I don't live in the city. I live out in the sticks. So I don't have too much traffic to deal with, but when I come to town, it's not the greatest.
Well, thanks for coming in all the way to Johannesburg. You spoke about going as fast as you can, flat out, putting that pedal, the accelerator down. What's going through your mind there? Because us mere mortals who get to like 135 on the highway, we're like, oh, we've got to watch the speed limits, The speed limit's very different for you in Dakar and in the rally.
Yeah, so nowadays, for safety, they started limiting the speed. So a few years ago, it was completely open. You could do as fast as the car would go. And in some stages, they were doing like 210 or 220 on completely virgin terrain. There was no road. It's not even like on a dirt road. It's on open fields and things.
Goodness.
So then they brought it down a few years ago to 180. And lately, it's been 170. So it's
still pretty fast.
It's still enough. It's still enough on gravel, and when there's no road, it's when you start hitting the limit, you think, okay, that's great. Now we don't have to go any faster. So yeah, it's still definitely still a thing. But I think a lot of people think, no, you got to be mad, or you got to be, is this massive adrenaline rush, or you got to just take risk all the time. But actually, if you look at it if you look at the whole race, let's say a race like Dakar is 4,000 kilometers that you have to get right. And if you're taking risk around every corner, there's no way you're going to finish it. I think Ross Branch said that it takes 4,000 kilometers to finish the Dakar, and it takes 1 to end it.
That's exactly right.
So if you're going to go flat out and take risks and have high adrenaline moments all the time, there's no way you're getting to the end. So it's actually quite calculated. It's a very different approach. I think a few times when we go to testing or we take people for drives, when they see me, they said that we never expected a racing driver to look like this or to act like this. But it's behind the steering wheel, it's actually quite a calculated sport.
And I mean, are you calm? I mean, obviously the heart rate's going, but are you calm, and is it like almost being in the zone where you know I'm dialed in here, I need to be focused 100% on what I'm doing?
Yeah, so there's like a few emotions that you go through, especially if you go into bigger races, having races overseas and that sort of thing. And you do get better at it over time, but for me the most difficult thing to get into is just before the race or before the first stage. That's when you actually have the adrenaline spike. So you're nervous about the start, you're nervous about what you'll do in the first stage, you're nervous about the terrain that you don't know about. But usually as soon as you drop the clutch, when the clock hits 0, everything goes away, and then it's purely calculated, trying to dial yourself back or get into that like zone. And usually you'll know when you have it. If you're going quick enough, then you know about it. And the days that you're not, then in the olden days I'd keep on pushing and make a mistake or have a big off. But lately I've been able to dial it back a little bit. And there's just some days when you know, okay, everything's not going perfectly, I need to get through this one and then carry on tomorrow. But in the olden days I was flat out everywhere.
We'll get back to where it all began for you and where you fell in love with racing, because it happened quite early on in your life. But how bad are those nerves before any race? I mean, you've won the cross-country championship 2019, 2020, 21 here. You and Brett Cummings have done a phenomenal job. But how hectic do those nerves get before a race, or before a stage?
So lately I've learned over the years how to handle them, or how to get rid of them. But back in the day, it was really bad. I used to physically get sick. I used to throw up before a race because of the nerves. There was nothing else.
Yeah.
So before the race, I'd get sick, and I can't eat. I can't eat in the mornings. I have to, even till today, I have to sort of force feed myself in the mornings. So it's bad. It goes 100 in the mornings, and then usually by the time we start, I've sort of pushed it down all the way to manageable level. But it's still a problem.
It's interesting, I suppose, as you do more events, as you mature as a driver. I mean, 28 years old, still pretty young in your especially in this sort of category of racing. But do you feel that with each race you kind of mature a bit? You know a bit more what to expect. You know your body, you know your mental state. And I suppose that's how you overcome these sort of nervous bouts, because at the end of the day you are putting your life on the line.
Yeah, so no, definitely. I mean, there's still a lot to learn.
Sure. And
I like to see myself, or to think about myself, as quite a laid back guy. I'm not too stressed about a lot of things.
Yeah.
But as I get older and as I go further and further into the sport, you start realizing that if you're racing against the best in the world, the talent and the pure speed or whatever, it's going to get you part of the way. It's not going to get you all the way. So lately I've gone against my nature and started trying to control all of the things outside of my driving. So my diet, my sleep, my eating, or when I eat and how I eat before a race. Like I said, I have to force myself before we start the stage. And there's a lot of things around it that I used to hate doing. It was the worst thing ever for me. And now I'm starting to get into it, and eventually you start enjoying those things as well. But it's definitely, over the years I've learned that there's a lot more to racing than just driving a car fast.
What's a typical meal for a race for you? Is it sort of, because it's interesting you said, I don't think people realize that you have to maintain your weight. You know, at the end of the day, it's extra kilograms that are in the car, but you also have to be fighting fit, if I can put it that way. So you can't just be a skeleton sitting behind a wheel.
Yeah, so luckily we have heavy cars. So my weight doesn't make big.
It's not like a
such big
horse and a
difference.
jockey. Yeah.
It's not like Formula One where they have to be on the kilogram. We can be 2 or 3 over.
Okay.
So it's there's some margin there, but I mean it's more about the energy that you have. So a typical day at Dakar, we wake up before the sun comes up. We have a little camper van, myself and Brett. And I'll eat something like Future Life or Prenitro or whatever I can manage to get down. So whatever's the easiest thing. Usually
There's no scrambled eggs and bacon and sort of things going on,
no, usually
especially in
not.
Saudi Arabia. I suppose.
No, plus when it's dark out, then nobody's going to wake up to make eggs and bacon. So so we have like a small breakfast like that, and then Brett will take a few bars in the car because usually I have a 200 or 300 kilometer road section. You drive with the normal cars on the road. Out into the desert before you start the stage, and sometimes I eat a bar or something like that there, and then you're racing for 4 hours, and then sometimes you have another 2 or 3 hours back to the pits. So on some days you leave the bivouac when it's dark, and then you arrive back when it's dark, and the only thing you have to eat is that small bowl of whatever you had in the morning, and then the bars that Brett brings along. So other than that, now and then we see if we can spot a McDonald's next to the road, grab a drive-through Big Mac or something.
You've earned it. Okay, silly question. Ray's going to probably edit this out. Does he pass you the bar and does he take the wrapper off and give it to you something?
So it doesn't feed me. But, so we take easy things to eat.
You got you know what I'm saying?
No. So on the open section, it's easy. I can open my own stuff.
Okay.
But in the stage, it's like that. He literally opens it for me, and then he'll pass it over. And you'll usually have to check is there a straight, because if you're fighting the car and going on 2 wheels or whatever, it will be a big mess.
Absolutely. Obviously, that trust with Brett is so important. But you guys have competed for a long time together now. I mean, a couple of years. He's also, which I didn't realize, he's done a Malimoto. This guy is. He's got an experienced dude, even though he's got like a bit of a baby-faced assassin look about him.
No, definitely. That's part of the reason he joined me, or we joined up. And it was actually Glenn Hall's idea. He told me I'd been racing for them for about a year, or maybe just over a year. I said he'd like me to meet up with this guy. He's done Dakar on a bike. He'd like me to see if we can get along. Because that's really important. I mean, you spend so much time together, and like you said, it's a trust thing. I've got his life in my hands, and he's got my life in his hands. So it was a big thing. So I went out to meet him, and I thought he was quite a good oak. So we joined up from there, and like you said, he's got a lot of experience from Dakar. He's done one race with the team on the bikes, and then he did the Malimoto, and that year actually ended up coming second in Malimoto. So he's quite handy on a bike. And I mean, if you have to ride the bike yourself and find your way, then you must be quite a good navigator as well. So he was the right guy to get into the car, especially even before my first Dakar. So it was the right move.
And I mean, when you're in that sort of high pressure situation, is there like room for a joke, or do you say much, or is there singing? I mean, forgive me for my ignorance, because I've never sat in the car. But there's got to be some of those moments that you guys share that makes that bond even stronger.
Yeah, no. So like outside the stage, we chat about life. Like you get to know this person well, like really well. Because I mean, 2 weeks spending 3 hours in the morning, 4 hours in the afternoon in the car, sleeping in the same camper. Yeah. So you spend literally you live with this person. It's like my. I don't know, it's my racing partner.
Yeah.
So you start to know a lot about this person, and then we listen to music on the way to the stage, and trust me, there are some moments in the stage. So there'll be a lot of things. You are serious about it, and you're racing flat out. But if it's that blind and that open, there's bound to be 1 or 2 moments where you both think you're gonna die and get through it, and then that's a moment you'll cherish. Yeah.
We survived that day. Take us to your Dakar debut. I mean, that must be a bit of a dream come true moment, if I can put it that way, or like a career highlight, knowing, because Dakar is the pinnacle in terms of the sort of off-road stuff. It's the race you want to be a part of.
No. So when I think when I was younger, I never thought about Dakar. And then I was racing rallying. And that was my passion.
Okay.
And then that sort of fell away, and I thought, okay, it's over. No more racing. And then I got into the cross country thing. And then it sort of reignited that passion and the drive. And then obviously your goal, I mean, if you're in rallying, WRC is the end goal. And if you are racing cross country or rally raid, then Dakar is the end goal. So it took me a few years. I was racing, I think it was 2 or 3 years before I got the first go at Dakar. So it was a massive build up, and I knew every year that I was racing cross country, there was a chance maybe next year I'll go to Dakar. And there was a chance the same year that Alonso went, there was a chance for me to go, and it just didn't end up going through. So you sort of you were getting yourself ready for this thing, and it just didn't come through at the end. So the next year when they told me I can go, then you can imagine everything is, I'm at that level. I'm ready to go. And I don't know, maybe that was the wrong mindset to arrive there, because the first 3 or 4 days were amazing, and the fifth one was not.
You were flying, weren't you?
No. So it was a bit of a baptism of fire. No, I was telling the story. We arrived there thinking, okay, the biggest thing they always tell you is don't get lost. Yeah. Because the navigation is a big part of Dakar. So I remember the first thing I thought, okay, don't get lost. And
scribble that down.
First one's don't get lost, and I'll tell you the second one just now. So the first one was we need to find at least the first waypoint. Yeah. I mean, the waypoints are 5-6 kilometers apart, and we set off after the first stage, or onto the first stage, and we were having a beautiful drive. I mean, we found this little road, like a sort of a riverbed in between trees, and the rhythm, that thing I told you about, when you feel okay, you've got it now. Yeah. That came immediately. So I thought, yes, this is going so well.
I don't know what they're talking about. This is easy.
I thought, yes, the cars, we're dancing it through the trees. Brett is happy. It's beautiful. Brett I think he was watching me drive. But eventually, we realized there are no other tracks, and we're not first on the road. So, and we couldn't remember when the track stopped, but it was a few kilometers back. Okay. So we missed our first waypoint.
Oh, wow.
So we ended up going back, and we were completely lost. We were driving around in circles. Eventually got over the top of a hill, and by blind luck, we found the waypoint. Okay. So the I think they called it ERTF or whatever, that just came on and had a green light, and we said, okay.
Here we are.
I was lucky. And then we could carry on. So that was day one. Yeah. So remember day one. Then the next few, they get better, because I mean, in South Africa, we don't have anything to practice this waypoint system on. So we have a completely different system to find the road. So that was the first thing we needed to learn. And then the next thing was the dunes. So the first day I had no dunes. And I remember saying, okay, the only thing we should do is not get stuck. Don't get stuck. So it was about 2 Ks we got stuck. So into it was the first dune, literally the first dune. There was no other dunes yet. The first dune of the Dakar, I got stuck. And it was just that thing, you're so nervous about getting up this thing that you just don't carry enough speed, and we just got stuck. So Brett had to climb out and dig the car out and put the sand ladders out, and it took us a while to get out of there. Then we got through this dune crossing and missed the next waypoint, so we turned back, went all the way through the dune crossing again. So it was really the first day and a half or 2 days was really the baptism of fire. And then day 3 and 4, I think we were 3rd and 2nd on the stage. So
you had a lot of people excited.
All of a sudden, it went really well.
Yeah. Obviously, the crashing side of the sport, the dangers that are there. When you happen to get into that situation, is it a case of it happens very fast and you sort of kind of brace yourself, or is it the time when it doesn't feel like slow motion? Because there's a lot of different accounts, and as someone who's experienced it firsthand, obviously with all due respect, but what's going through your mind there? Because I imagine sometimes it could be something that happens super fast and you're like, oh crap, here we are.
I think, like you said, I might be too experienced at crashing. So before, like I said, when I was younger, I was flat out all the time, and I actually had a few. I'm not proud of it, but I had quite a lot of crashes when I was younger in the rally cars. So When I went over to cross country, it was very clear: don't crash the car.
Yeah.
So I had to bring it back a few notches, and the crashes they're not as frequent anymore. But when I have one, it's usually quite a big one. And like I said, you don't. Usually, I think on the track or whatever, if you see a crash coming, you brace yourself. But
Yeah.
in cross country, I mean, every corner is half a crash.
Exactly.
So you
It's very
don't,
well put. Yeah.
you don't get time to brace yourself. You're always sorting the car out somehow. I mean, you're going blind across dunes.
Yeah.
The car's on two wheels. Then you save that. Then you hit a big ditch at the bottom. The car wants to go on the other two wheels. You save that again. Then there's a tree. You got to go off the road, miss the tree. Then you save that, and then you can carry on going. So it's a bit of a it's a sequence of saving crashes to get through a stage if you want to go at the speed that the top guys are going. And I mean, everybody's doing this.
Yeah.
There's nobody that doesn't have a moment in a stage that they're pushing. So it is a bit like that. You don't want to be completely out of control, but you learn to. I've always said in rallying I learned how to drive on gravel, and then in cross country I learned how to drive the car in the air a little bit. So
Okay, I got you.
there's some places where it's so rough that you only touch the ground every 2 or 3 meters.
Yeah.
So you're bouncing the car almost across this really rough terrain.
I can't even like picture it. I mean, I've seen the visuals and I mean, there's some amazing visuals, but you think like you guys are superhumans. You're like cowboys out there, man.
No, it feels well. I mean, like I said, it feels like in the beginning, and then after a while, you start realizing, okay, there's a bit of a technique to this.
Yeah.
And once you figure that out, it starts becoming a lot of fun. Like I'm really starting to enjoy that side of it. But yeah, it is like that. So usually when it goes a bit too far and you don't manage to save the crash, you drive it until the very end.
Oh, I see.
mean, I'll give it counter steer and throttle when we're upside down. So just thinking, how can we stop the roll at least?
Yeah, I got you.
Because I mean, the car's also so strong that usually when your body doesn't break, you can fix the car, patch it up, and you can still get to the end. And that's a bit of the problem. That's why I'm sitting in this sling.
Yeah.
Is you see a problem coming. I saw we're going into a ditch, but I was already thinking about when this thing lands, I need to catch it because we're going to be on the front wheels, and hopefully we can pull it out and survive and carry on. And that didn't happen. So my hands were on the steering wheel, and I think part of what damaged my shoulder is the fact that I was holding onto the steering wheel, and when we hit the ditch, it just swung the steering to the left. Plus we pulled a couple of G's, a lot of G's.
Jeepers.
So that force just forced it out. So it's one of those things. If I let go, maybe I would have been fine. We could have carried on, but you're never going to give up if you're halfway through a crash.
Well, I'm just glad you were alive to, talk about it, because there are guys that haven't made it after crashes, But I think for me, the interesting thing is you mentioned your rallying side and then going to the cross country. Like, you've acquired skills over the years, from way back when, and now you're applying it to a very different sort of scenario. But I imagine that experience and how you apply it goes hand in hand to someone who's maybe just getting into Dakar or into this sort of space for the first time.
Yeah, and it's impossible. I wouldn't even be able to explain it to my younger self because I wouldn't listen to myself. You always hear the older guys when you're younger saying, you need to get to the end and you need to build the experience and you need to build your pace up and all of that sort of thing. And you think, okay.
Yeah, sure.
And,
sure, Bali.
Then after a while, like in the beginning, I think the young guys, they're fast.
Yeah.
In all forms of racing, the top end of the field is becoming younger and younger. If you look at like Max Verstappen or Kalle Rovanperä, like those guys they're extremely young for what they're doing. And I think the same thing will probably start happening in cross country. But I also think on the other hand, the young guys are really fast in the beginning, but I think sometimes they don't understand why they're fast.
Okay.
And I think over time you start to understand why somebody's faster, why somebody's got the speed, or why somebody's better in some areas than you, and then you can start working on that. That's the side that's starting to take a bit of time, and then you can, if you start figuring out why you fast, then if we have a section that I'm quite good at compared to everybody else, I can take it a bit easier in somewhere that I needed to take a bit more risk when I was younger. and that side, that's the experience that everybody's talking about that I never understood. So now it's getting there slowly.
Speaking of that sort of going fast, do you have a memory of that first time when you were like, I actually like this? You know, in your racing, before even your racing career, but there was probably a moment when you're like, I quite like going fast. I think I'm going to race, you know, other people. Can you maybe share that or go back to where it sort of started, where you fell in love with going fast and racing, I suppose?
I don't know. I can't remember liking going fast.
Okay.
Look, I grew up. My dad was racing since I was.
Yeah, it's in your
sort
blood.
of Grew
Absolutely.
up around the track. There's pictures of me at 2 years old in the racing car, and then I'd always wanted to race, but I don't think I ever understood what it was to race. You know, so I was pushing. I wanted to do karting. My dad didn't like the scene, and then I wanted to go to track racing, and he wasn't too keen on that, and I carried on trying. And eventually, rallying was where we started. And back then I started in a Toyota, so it's gone full circle. But it was a small Toyota Taz, a 1300. It's a slow thing, so you can't go faster than that. But I think the side that I really liked was not the speed, not going 120 past a tree or whatever. It was more the skill set. It's like almost learning to juggle. You know, other people can do it. You should be able to do it as well. And then when you get it, you're like, okay, wow,
Okay. Yeah, I got
that's
this.
nice. Now I've got to learn the next thing. And that's what it's like rallying or racing. It's you know there are a certain set of skills that you need to develop. I mean, the first time I got into the car, my dad told me, okay, right foot's for acceleration, left foot's for clutch and brake. So then you know, okay, you got to get this balance right, and then you got to learn how to slide the car, and you got to sort of develop those skills. And in the beginning was we after school, my mom would take me. I'd get in the passenger seat of the rally car. I didn't have a license, and we'd go across the road, and there was a farm with a small track on it, and she'd sit there next to the road, and I was just driving laps and driving around cones and just figuring the thing out. And I mean, that was that time of my life was amazing. You learned this brand new skill set, and you were sort of figuring it out as you were going along. And it's that side is what I really enjoyed. The speed thing, you start to understand how to go fast later, but I wasn't after the speed. It was more mastering the skill.
I got you. So it's not an adrenaline rush sort of thing. It was more about how can I get this and learn this and be the best at it.
Yeah.
So I take it your driver's license was a breeze.
Luckily. No, luckily that was not too bad. I think I would have gotten, I would have never heard the end of it if I failed it.
In terms of looking at the next sort of chapter for you, or not next chapter, but maybe the next few years, Dakar, getting back into it. And I think it was an interview you did a little while ago where you said you're not in there just to punish your body, just to be a part of it and say I'm experiencing it. You're there to win it. Is that still very much part of the sort of thinking, despite the injuries that you have had in the sport?
So that's why it was. I mean, getting the surgery now was a very difficult decision because there was a small chance that I could have tried to race Dakar if I didn't have a surgery. It would have been on the edge, and there would have been a very high chance of me dislocating my shoulder, not even from a crash, just from hitting a dune or a bump at Dakar. So
that force, right?
No, it's really it's rough. Like even when you're not crashing, it hurts.
Yeah.
So it was a tough decision because it was. I mean, the next step or the next logical step is getting enough budget and funding to do not just Dakar but the World Championship. Okay. Because there are 4 other rounds outside of Dakar, each of them about a week long, and 2 or 3 of them in the dunes in exactly the sort of terrain with the same sort of navigation that you get at Dakar. So that was the next step, and it was looking quite good for next year. So this Dakar, as tough as it is, it was one of those that would have been sort of the start of that next step.
I got you.
We have gained a lot of experience. I've practiced a lot in the dunes. The navigation we're starting to understand. Abu Dhabi in the beginning of the year, so we got the extra practice in the Junes, and in that sort of competition, the same guys that you race against at Dakar were there. So it was everything was shaping up to start off a great year. And so the call was either we try and do it, but the risk of that is I would have lost 3 months.
Yeah.
And then if I damaged it there, I would have had to sit out for another 5 or 6. So the call was made to do it now, which means I'll lose 5 months. So at most I'll miss a Dakar and an Abu Dhabi. So the reason for it was because I still want to be in the sport. I want to stay. I want to stay in the sport. I want to be competitive, and just doing this one Dakar is not gonna be the long-term solution if I hurt myself. So I've taken some time. I'm looking after my body a bit more, getting it back up to speed, and then hopefully we can start competing in a few more of the WRC or the W2RC rounds, and then hopefully carry on building the skills and building it into a long-term career. Because, like I said, it hurts enough that it's not great to just do it for fun.
Yeah, you're gonna have something to show for it at the end of the day.
No, exactly.
It's quite interesting from a mental point of view. Like, how tough has it been mentally for you to know that you're missing out on this one, on this opportunity? But I suppose at the same time, it was something you had to do in order to prolong your career.
No, so I don't know if it's hit me fully.
Okay, maybe when the sort of build-up is a bit closer.
It's been 5 weeks and I'm going through ups and downs, but also I sort of knew what was coming. I mean, my first Dakar had the same thing on day 5, and that time it was in COVID, so there was no way of flying back and getting out the race. So I was sort of forced back into this whole Dakar world, watching everybody go out for the stages, driving on the roads, seeing the terrain, seeing the cars race, and then I've got trouble.
Yeah.
So there's no way of getting back into the race. You know that you're going to probably miss the first round of the local season. There's no testing, there's no practice, there's nothing. There's no way of you saying, okay, let's get back into it and get back up to speed. And that's usually the first thing you want to do as a racing driver. If you have a big crash or if you have an injury, the first thing you want to do is get back in the car and race it flat out and say, okay, we're okay. Let's carry on where we left off. With this, there's no chance of doing that. You've got to wait 5 or 6 months, and then only hopefully you can get a test or you can get into a stage. And then coming back is quite nerve-wracking.
I can imagine.
Is
confidence a big part of it?
Definitely.
Yeah.
So I haven't had a problem getting back yet, and I think this time should be the same. But it is usually it's something to think about because, like you said, when you get into the zone, you sort of go into a mindset where you do everything right. And there's thousands of things that you need to do in a stage, but every one of them goes according to plan. And then you don't think about crashing or about what could happen or anything like that. So if you're in there and that's really where you need to get to, then you're fast, you are clean, you're confident, everything's going well. So if you start bringing yourself out of that mode and thinking, "Ooh, we mustn't drop it now," then usually it starts going wrong.
Okay.
So you don't want to drive defensively. You want to attack.
Yeah, that's the only way is attack.
Yeah.
I remember you said something in an interview that I was watching on I think it was on YouTube. Thank you to everyone who's liked and subscribed to our podcast. We appreciate it. You said Janelle de Villiers was actually a great teammate. As a guy who's an absolute legend of the race, a former winner, having someone like that with the knowledge, the experience, he also appears to be quite a chill dude. How much of a sort of benefit or advantage is that for you, like when you were first coming in and now as you making your way in Dakar?
Oh, so look, definitely Janelle has taught me a lot in the sport. I mean, I'm like I said before, I'm very grateful to have a teammate like that because I've been part of a few different teams, and it's not always like that. You usually in motorsport or in basically any sport, your teammate's actually your number one competitor. It shouldn't be like that, but they're in the same equipment with the same setup, with the same backing, doing the same race as you.
Competing for top spot.
Yeah, so minimum, if you are good enough, you should be beating that guy.
Yeah.
So that was so. Usually it's not that open, but I think with Janil, I mean, he's had a great career and he's proven himself. He's got nothing to prove.
Yeah.
Or everybody knows he's one of the best in the world. So I think that was a nice environment to come into, because he didn't need to prove anything against me, and when I was still up and coming and finding my feet. And in the beginning, he really helped me a lot to do that. So he was always open. If I asked him, can I sit in the car with him if he goes into the dunes or whatever, he said no problem. So, and you got the feeling it was genuinely showing me what he thought would help me. It was not the case with everyone. I've been in cars with other people where they show you some dodgy things. So, yeah.
You know that you've opened up the door to the question now. What are those dodgy things that they showed you? But we'll get to that just now. But with Janil, I just sort of get the feeling like he's trying to sort of pass on the baton in a way, because he knows eventually his time will come to retire. But also, I mean, just what a great ambassador for the sport.
Yeah. No, I don't think he's ready to retire just yet. No, he's still got a fight in him.
Yeah.
I see it a lot especially in the local series, and every now and then at Dakar, you'll think we did a good stage now, and then Janil will come through and just pip you.
Okay.
So yeah, no, he's still on it. He's awake. He's a great driver. He's got a lot of experience. So that's why it's so great learning from him. And something that everybody doesn't see is more behind the scenes, setting up the car, building the car. Because I mean, the car we're racing was built, developed, set up by that one team. It's a South African car, South African people, South African drivers. And if you don't have a driver giving the direction, then you can't build a fast racing car. So that side of it, he's also really good at. So not just from a driving side or experience in the dunes or whatever. He's actually learned me he's taught me a lot in setting up the car and in suspension and dampers and more the technical side. So I think people don't know that, but he's a extremely technical guy on that side as well.
Yeah, on Toyota Gazoo Racing, South Africa have done a phenomenal job. I mean, how many Dakars have you now won as a team? Obviously, Nassal Attiyah has moved on, but at the same time, it's sort of opened the door, for you guys to challenge for the title. I just want to touch on Janil. What is the best advice that he's given you? Is it don't get lost and don't get stuck? Or
No, I can't think of that like nugget. But no, I just remember once we were in Namibia, and we were going up this dune, and he said, "See those little ripples there? We're not going there." And then he turned around and went back down the dune. And I learned the hard way going over one of those dunes, and I saw the ripples. I thought, okay, no, maybe we'll make it. And when I got over the top, there was these 3 massive bowls, but like sand bowls.
Oh, wow.
But let's say you can fit 5 Hiluxes in there.
Okay.
So we went over the top, hit the first one, completely out of control, flew into the second one, and gathered the car back up by the time we'd landed in the third one. And then I knew, okay, we mustn't stop now because we're going to get stuck. So we drove around in a little circle, probably like 5 or 10 times, and then stopped. And then we had to somehow dig our way out or make our way out of this bowl. And then that sort of, I clicked, okay, that's why you must watch out for the little ripples.
How has sort of being a father changed the way you approach racing? I mean, being a family man, I know you've said that in the days you were hell for leather, let's just attack. But does that sort of play a part in the back of your mind that, at every time that you're out there and when you race, I'm sure your family's probably biting nails or just praying that you get back unscathed sort of thing? And maybe just share, like, what is that relationship like with the family? And they must be incredibly proud and supportive of you.
Yeah, so my wife met me after I started racing, so that helps a lot. She has no say in it after that. She knew what she was getting into.
Fair enough.
I remember I was still running, but I was, let's say, 18, 19. And one of my teammates, Argen, he used to always tell the story because then I was, like I said, we were flat out. So we were quite quick on the stages. And in some of the more difficult stages, especially like in PE in the Longmore Forest, there's these mountain passes, but the most spectacular roads, really high speed, blind crests, and 200-meter drops on the side of the road. So it's really you have to have
Your wits about you,
yeah.
absolutely.
So he used to tell me, because we were quite quick across those stages, and he used to tell me, no, he can't be that quick, because as soon as he comes up to that blind crest sideways, he just sees his two children's faces in the distance, and he taps off a bit and then goes across.
Wow.
So that hasn't happened yet.
Okay.
I must say I've checked, but no, it's not there.
It's an interesting one, I think, because it is a dangerous sport at the end of the day. It's a phenomenal sport, motorsport. South Africa, we've got some incredible places, and you just mentioned, for racing around South Africa. Do you have a favorite place to race in South Africa?
Favorite place? Yeah, so there was only one race there. So they called it the Rally of South Africa, and it was actually North Coast, Durban. And the
sugarcane, and
it was sugarcane, and then it went into forest. So it was a mixture of sugarcane and forest roads, and one corner to the next, and the speed went from like very slow, very slippery, very sideways to quite high speed, still quite sideways, with a lot of grip in between the trees. And I remember that race was, my dad was still rallying at the time, and I was in the older car, and myself and him started having a bit of a dice.
Okay.
And we started edging ahead of him, and that was the first time that I think I was able to start beating my dad. And then unfortunately we took a wheel off just before the end, but that was probably the most beautiful area. That was a beautiful area.
How would you sort of summarize or sum up the South African scene at the moment? Like, in general, we've got a lot of talented drivers. We've got co-drivers. We've got great places to race. We've got a great scene. How would you sum it up as someone who's gone through it, and sort of reached the Dakar stuff? I know that's still unfinished business, but you've put in the hard yards.
Yeah, no, like I said, I'm definitely not there yet. But I started my career in rallying, and I think I probably hit the peak of rallying. I was racing when it was at its peak. We had 17 S2000 cars, which are, let's say, except for WRC at the time, they were the best cars you could have. So it was a really strong field. So it was a great place to test your skills. And then got out of that into the cross country scene, and at the moment that's also the strongest it's ever been. So I was fortunate to hop series as the one was maybe slowing down a bit. The rallying scene is not what it used to be, but the off-road or the cross-country scene is really picking up a lot in South Africa. This year we've got three different manufacturers from South Africa going to the Dakar. So
it's brilliant.
It's actually it's unbelievable. This is probably the hub of cross-country racing in the world.
Like, I think, what is it, Ray? It's at the Safari in Kenya or something like that. What is that? Is that rallying or is that cross country?
That was rallying.
That's rallying, right? Is that something you would or have done or would consider looking at as racing in other parts of Africa? Like, because Kenya's got a proud history, of hosting these events. And I'm always just curious, like, what's the attraction? I know a guy like Guy Bottrell has often competed and told stories of how a car or half a car is in one ship, and then there's tires on another boat, and then there's a barge, and it's like it's not for the faint-hearted. But is that something you would ever sort of experience or look at doing, or getting just that sort of, I don't know, tick that box?
No, look, I love racing, so anything I can get into, I will race. Yeah. so when I ended or when I stopped rallying, I always said I want to go back again one day. So whether it's one day when I've retired and we're racing rear-wheel drive escorts for fun or something like that, I don't know. But I mean, I've done 1 or 2 WRC rounds. So we're fortunate enough to go to Monte Carlo to do the rally there, and then to Portugal as well to do the WRC. So that's an amazing experience.
Yeah.
You get to see parts of a country that no tourist would ever get to, because you're driving on rural roads in areas where no tourist is going to go by himself. So no, it's definitely, I mean, if I had the opportunity, I'd definitely go back to doing WRC, or I mean, at the moment I'm even racing with my dad and them on the track. So that's something that's really nice to share with him.
Okay.
Yeah, so because I've grown up around the track and always watched them drive. So I'm not obviously not a track driver, but it's a lot of fun doing the different disciplines, and sharing it with them is awesome.
And how's that sort of been in terms of acquiring those skills? Because it's a different skill set to the Dakar, for example, or WRC.
I think a lot of the skills translate, especially coming from rallying. We did some tarmac rallies in Europe and so on. So you understand what a car should do on tar, and you should be a bit smoother.
Yeah.
And it's a different way of setting up the car and that sort of thing. So it's come across, but there are some finer details that I've learned. It's a lot more on the edge, obviously, on the track.
Yeah.
In cross country, although it doesn't look like it, you need to leave a bit more margin because there can be an unexpected tree or rock around the corner. But on the track, you can be on the limits all the time, and it's relatively safe going at 99 or 98%. So it's a different kind of fun.
Yeah, I imagine racing's never going to leave your DNA, or like I'm sure like one day when you eventually sit back and you're like, I had a good time. You might still be racing something somewhere in some format.
No, I think it will never leave you. I think once the bug is bitten, it's game over.
Henk, what does the future hold now? What are some of the objectives for you? I mean, obviously we want to get you fit and healthy.
Yeah.
Your pillow friend there, as uncomfortable but as supportive as it is, once that's done, you're back to full strength. What are you looking to achieve?
So number one is getting fit enough to be able to drive the car. Like I said, I've done this once, and after 100 days after my surgery, I was back in the car,
Which is incredible, actually.
which was a bit ambitious, to be honest. So I remember we went. Our first race back was Sugarbelt here, which is quite a tough rally. Quite a tough race. It's very twisty, very rough, demanding. And I started the rally off and I felt fine. And we were actually leading by quite far. And then I remember in the second lap we got a puncture, and I was so weak in this arm that I couldn't get the wheel out, and I couldn't put the wheel back on.
Gee.
So I had to call Brett and say, "You've got to finish this by yourself," and then we could carry on. But yeah, it's this time I need to look after a bit better. I think getting back to full strength is number one. Having said that, I have a race in mind that I'm going to try and get to, which is also maybe a bit ambitious. But I'm doing everything that I can. I'm looking after my diet, my sleep, my training, everything to sort of get it back to full strength as soon as possible. Even though you can be back in, let's say, 5 months, the full recovery takes 1 to 2 years. So.
Wow.
It's a complicated joint, so it takes a bit more time to heal. But yeah, first goal is getting back up to speed, and then definitely trying to get into the world championship, into those races. That's always, since I've started rally raid or cross country, that's been the goal. I want to do the world championship and race. You want to be in the environment where the same guys that go to Dakar and the same guys that you're competing against are also racing. And I mean the level of competition there is so high, and you're racing in similar conditions on similar road books to what you do at Dakar. So that's definitely what should happen next.
Yeah. A lot of people don't realize that it's not about just getting behind a wheel and driving a car. I mean, you have to be fit. You have to go to gym and that sort of thing. We've got a few minutes. What are some of those, there's a training program. I mean, now obviously it's rehab and getting that, but, watching what you do, and like you say, getting a proper amount of sleep is all key to being an elite athlete.
Yeah, so like I said in the beginning, I didn't worry about any of this because I was also a lot younger, so it was easier. But it is a big part of it. It helps you. I mean, get focused, and in the local race, not the end of the world. We have 1 day of qualifying, and then the next day you race. So if you take it out of your body, that's sort of okay. But if you go to the World Championship, it's 5 days, and Dakar is, or 5 or 6 days, and Dakar is 2 weeks. So if you go there and your body is not full of energy and you're not topped up to exactly where you can be, and you're not fit enough so that you don't use too much energy in the stage, you're going to run out of energy at some point. So the only thing that happens then, you either slow down or you start losing concentration, and then it's just a crash waiting to happen.
Lastly, what would it mean to you to win Dakar? Like, have you dreamt? Have you visualized that? Have you thought about it? Because, I mean, that's why you're doing it, right? You're not there to, hey, selfie Dakar, right?
Yeah. No, so, yeah, unfortunately, I'm not big on the selfie and the Instagram and the Facebook and that sort of thing. It's something that I need to get better at. I need to get better at that. But, yeah, so it's never been about, let's say, the fame or the glory or the whatever. It really, I mean, I'm at my happiest when I know I've done a good stage. So it's always, it's impossible to have a perfect stage. But that's what you keep chasing. Yeah. You want to have as close to that perfect stage as you can. So I'm usually at my happiest when I've done my best stages, and I've thought about it, about winning Dakar and about say winning a world championship or whatever. And the thing that I'm scared of is, what if you win it and you think, okay, now we need to do the next one? So I don't think it's going to end.
No.
So definitely the goal is to win, or to, let's say, get on the podium and then go from there. But I don't think it's going to stop. I'm not going to win the first one and say, okay, I've done it, cheers. It will carry on. You'll keep building the skills, keep building the speed, keep working with the team. It's something that I don't see there should be an end to. As long as I can, I'll try and keep improving.
And also, you got to beat Janelle's record. He's won one. You've got to go two.
At least.
And remind him.
Yeah.
Henk Lategan, thanks so much for your time. We wish you a speedy recovery. Have a wonderful festive season. And yeah, we hope to see you back in action soon. Thanks for sharing your insights, your experience, because not everyone is cut out or is talented or gets the opportunity to compete in the levels you have. So keep up the great work. You're a great ambassador for the sport. And yeah, can't wait to see you back in a car.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.